Hey, this is Zero Radius coming at you from Ohio, USA, and today I'm going to be showing you how to export valid CSS and HTML using Adobe Fireworks. This isn't going to be the same as you've seen in the past with Adobe Photoshop where you export it as HTML and it comes out as a whole bunch of slices that ends up as just a mess and break apart really easy. This is going to be actual CSS that you'll be able to use. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create guidelines on my canvas just to give me the dimensions I want and make it a little easier to set stuff up. So if I left click on the ruler and bring it down, you'll see that a blue line appears, and if I hold shift, some dimensions will appear. So I want to give it a top margin of 50 pixels in this case. And this is going to be a simple site, so the top, instead of being a banner like you usually see, is actually just going to be a navigation bar. And then we'll have a footer down here at the bottom. And the size of the margins doesn't actually matter any. Oops. Because it's not going to keep the dimensions that you put in as the margins when you export this. But I know I want my page to be 800 pixels here, so I'm going to give it a side margin of 50. And do the same over here. Now the dimensions of the center, of course, does matter, and the size of my nav bar and all that good stuff. So the first thing I want to do once I got my guidelines set up is I want to rename layer 1 to divs, and this folder is going to hold exactly what it sounds like. Everything inside of it's going to become a div in our HTML. So to create the divs, all you have to do is select the solid rectangle tool, and in this case go ahead and use white. Hover over the guidelines until both parts of your crosshair turn red. Drag it out. Again, hover over until both parts turn red, and release. Now come down to your properties menu, and here you can name what the div is going to be, and this is actually going to set up a ID for it in your CSS. So you're going to want to use the same naming conventions you would use if you were just writing out the CSS right now. And in my case, that's going to be lower camel case, and I'm going to name this nav bar. And then I want to do the same thing for the body and for the footer. I want to pause the video while I do that. Okay, so now I've got three main sections to my website. I've got the navigation bar, I've got the body container, and I've got the footer. So I want to go ahead and select my regular canvas, and I want to give it a dark gray color just to make it contrast a little. Now this isn't going to be the actual background of my site. If you're wanting to use an image background, you're going to wait until export, and I'll show you just how easy it is to get a background on there. But if you want a solid color, now's the time to go ahead and set that. I'm also going to change my header and footer colors because I don't want to keep them solid on the site because that would just look stupid. Not that this looks any better, but whatever. Okay, so now we got them their solid color, and even though it's not going to look nowhere near as good, just to show you as an example, let's go ahead and create a linear gradient. We'll do that on both the header and the footer. And the reason I'm wanting to show you this is just how to set up a background if you want to do any type of repeatable background image on either your navigation bar or whatever it is. This is how you'll go about that. Come down to your web part of your toolbox and select Slice Tool. Hover over until both parts of your crosshair turn red. Bring it down. And once you have that selected, come down to your Properties window and select Background Image. You're going to have four options in the repeat. You got no repeat, repeat, which is going to repeat on both the X and the Y, and then you can pick either just the X or just the Y. In this case, we're going to pick just the X. And then I need to do the same thing down here. And the next thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and add my navigation bar. So, create my new layer, text, got home, about us, frequently asked questions, and let's say resume. Now, one thing you want to make sure you do is resize this text box so that it spans all the way across the room you have that you want it to cover, because otherwise, even though it looks fine now, it might wrap your text downwards when you export, and that never looks good. So now that that's done, I'm going to add another layer in here. Come down to special characters, get my copyright sign, I apologize if my spelling's wrong. It's not exactly my forte. Okay, so now that we got those two set up, go ahead down to the images, file, import. I want to go ahead and bring in my logo. Now you'll see the little upside down L there appear when you go to the import, and you've got two options here. Either you can click one time, left mouse button, and the image will appear as its regular size, but mine's way too big for that, so if you need it to be a certain size, you can left click and hold and then drag it out to the size that you want it to be. Now, I want to add in two more divs. I want to give this one a black border of 2 pixels. And name it Twitter Updates. Now let's say I want to put some default text in here, and I want to use lorem ipsum. Well, Fireworks provides that for you as well. So just click once, go to Commands, Text, and select lorem ipsum, and it'll bring in a block of text for you. I don't need quite that much, so I want to take a bunch of it away, since this is only going to show one Twitter update at a time. Now I need to add one other div, and this one's going to have no border. And I'm going to name this content container. And this is where the unique stuff of my page is going to load in. So it's as simple as that. Now, if I select my logo and right click, come down to Insert Rectangular Slice, and it's automatically going to fit a slice there for me. Now, any image that you want to come out on your page, you have to slice. As far as this over here with the border, you don't need to worry about it. It's going to come out as a div, so that's all done in code, and it's going to export as such. So now that we've got our site set up here, go up to File, Export, and select CSS and Images. If you want to put images in a separate folder, you can. I prefer to. If you've already got an images folder in there, then just select it using Browse. If you don't, leave it alone and it'll create one for you. Then go to Options, and this is where we're going to add in our background. So if I go to my pictures, I've already got a background ready that I use for everything when I first make something, and I want this to repeat on both the X and the Y axis. And then you got your page alignment. I prefer all my web pages to hover in the center just because I think it looks better. So hit OK and then hit save. Okay, so here's our site completed, and you can see everything's how we told it to be. Now let's view the source code. So view source, and you'll see that it's actually structured very well, using the convention that I actually use in my code anyway. So I thought that was very nice. And if we go to Dreamweaver, again, there's all the code, and let's say, well, first here's the CSS, and you'll see it created the classes, it created the IDs, so on and so forth. Now, one annoying thing about it is all of this is placed so that it's static and not dynamic. For example, if I put too much text into this container that was down here, this one up here, it won't expand. But it's easy enough to fix, just like you would in your regular CSS. So if I hold Alt and left click on my div inside of Dreamweaver, and come down on my code navigator to Twitter updates, and I want to leave that height as a minimum height so that it doesn't get any smaller than it is. So just change height to min height, and then add in a regular height and make it auto so that it automatically wraps. And it's as simple as that. That's pretty much the biggest changes you have to make, is just changing that stuff so that it automatically expands out. Other than that, your CSS is good and everything's going to run for you. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. I hope it wasn't too bad to follow along, and I'll see you next time.